The girl's hand was accidentally cut by an iron rack, but not a drop of blood was shed, and her body gradually withered like a deflated balloon. Seeing this, a colleague quickly rushed to the front desk to get tape and sealed the girl's wrist wound. After obtaining the girl's consent, the colleague blew air into her body with his mouth. Thus, Nozomi returned to normal. Noera was a humanoid doll purchased by Hideo for 5,000 yen, used for daily companionship and desire venting. However, that day, after Hideo bid farewell with a kiss and left the door, the doll Nozomi unexpectedly woke up. She slowly got off the bed, walked to the window, and extended her hand outside, feeling the residual raindrops on the windowsill gently patting her palm. To explore the unfamiliar world, Nozomi tried on several outfits: a men's shirt, an old man's school uniform, a sexy mermaid crop top, but she didn't like any of them until she saw a cute maid outfit. After changing clothes, Nozomi walked alone onto the busy street. At the intersection, there was a garbage station where residents casually discarded trash as they passed by. Sanitation workers arrived promptly to sort and transport the waste. Initially confused, Nozomi squatted nearby and observed carefully. An elegant elderly woman passed by. Curious about her gait, Nozomi followed behind, mimicking her steps and subtly learning the greeting etiquette. The elderly woman soon reached her destination and discussed a family annihilation case with her friend. A family of 3 was murdered in their sleep, and the killer was a dropout boy whose motive was dissatisfaction with the girl's parents' opposition to their relationship. This news was shocking, but Nozomi did not understand death, nor why humans behave this way. She found listening to their conversation boring and instead moved behind a group of children holding hands. The little girl at the back suddenly reached out to Nozomi, but quickly retracted her hand upon contact because Nozomi's skin had no warmth. Rejected, Nozomi had no choice but to go to the park and play like the children. However, the children were soon taken away by their parents, leaving Nozomi alone, gazing at the vast city. As night fell, Nozomi, who had played all day, prepared to return home. On the way back, a video store caught her attention. Staring at the dazzling array of discs, Nozomi felt as if she had opened the door to a new world, and she joyfully wandered through the store. What surprised Nozomi even more was that when she saw the cashier at the front desk, she felt a flutter of attraction. Coincidentally, there was a recruitment poster on the wall, and Nozomi secretly decided to apply for a job at the video store tomorrow. When she returned home, Hideo, who had just finished work, was still the same as always, pushing Nozomi as they strolled around the community activity square. Since it was already late at night, the square was deserted, so Hideo dared to make some couple-like gestures with Nozomi. However, Nozomi, who had awakened her self-awareness, subconsciously avoided his affection. The next day, Nozomi successfully applied and officially became an employee at the video store. Nozomi is completely clueless about movies, but her colleagues patiently teach her about DVD classification. When asked by her colleagues if she has a boyfriend, Nozomi nervously responds no. Although Hideo, who bought Nozomi, can hardly be called her lover, she still feels she has been deceiving herself. Nozomi happily spends her first day at work, but at night, she endures discomfort and once again plays the doll, bathing and sleeping with Hideo. Even more, the next day at work, while focusing on organizing shelves, Hideo secretly peeks up her skirt and shamelessly records a video. Although aware of his misconduct, Nozomi, unaware of human depravity, mistakenly thinks he is staring because her stitches on her leg look ugly. By chance, Nozomi passes by a makeup store, where she asks the makeup artist to conceal the gaps on her body and buys some high-coverage concealer. Later, to look more human, Nozomi enters the mall to buy many new clothes. Gradually, she becomes more and more like a real person, and her relationship with cashier Junichi also grows closer. At work, they clean the store together. After work, they go to the seaside to enjoy the gentle sea breeze. At this moment, Nozomi suddenly recalls Hideo's words from the previous night. Sometimes he really envies Nozomi because she won't grow old. At that time, Nozomi was completely puzzled, not understanding why he would feel such sadness. She doesn't understand what aging is. Until Junichi explains, growing old means gradually maturing, slowly heading toward death, and death is the end of life. Nozomi longs to understand the meaning of life, but does not want their date to turn into a Q&A, so she quickly dismisses the idea of asking further questions. As the sunset dyes the sky red, the two arrive at a restaurant for dinner. But Nozomi doesn't need to eat at all, so she can only lower her head and draw. At that moment, a little girl at the neighboring table, taking advantage of her father's inattention, secretly throws away the disliked carrot and then pretends to chew it to fool her father. Seeing this, Nozomi immediately imitates the girl, causing her to burst into laughter. After dinner, Junichi takes Nozomi to the bus stop. Curious, Nozomi keeps asking questions along the way, and Junichi patiently answers each one. Under the street lamp, her shadow suddenly reveals her hollow body. She is frightened and keeps dodging, unwilling to let Junichi see her true form. When parting, Junichi, usually passive, surprisingly asks Nozomi proactively, "Is there anything else you want to know?" Nozomi doesn't answer and, only after boarding the bus home alone, murmurs to herself, "I want to learn more about Junichi." Clearly, Nozomi has already fallen for Junichi, and even after returning home, she still gazes longingly at the glass bottle they found together. That night, while tidying her wardrobe, Nozomi accidentally finds her own packaging box. The production date and price tag above caused Nozomi to fall into deep inferiority. She was nothing but a bloodless, soulless, cheap, and worn-out tool for venting desire. How could she have the guru to love? The next day at work, due to her unfamiliarity with the job, Nozomi kept making mistakes and had to keep bowing and apologizing to customers. Even so, Nozomi saw that the legs of passing women each had a vertical line, and she immediately grabbed her concealer to catch up. She did not want the other person to also face discrimination, but she did not know that it was merely the style of the stockings. After work, Nozomi sat exhausted on a park bench. An elderly person suddenly turned to Nozomi and talked about mayflies. The adult lifespan is only 2 days, and they cannot eat because they lack a digestive system. This evolution is only to ensure the survival of their larvae in the abdomen. Essentially, their existence seems solely for reproduction, which in a sense is utterly meaningless. After finishing, the elderly person sadly added, "Humans are the same." Nozomi listened and honestly said, "She is also empty inside." The old man suddenly looked delighted, as if encountering a fellow. "What a coincidence! I am also like that." Recently, most city people are like this, busy all day just for 3 meals, surrounded by noise but full of loneliness, desiring love and care, yet rejecting others at the door, unable to endure intimacy, but able to tolerate workplace bullying. Truly a sad contradiction. They have life, but do not understand life. Life is not self-sufficient through non-stamen and non-pistil. It is a flawed existence that can only reproduce through visits from wind and insects. We are all others in each other's lives, weaving the world's fabric through bonds. Unable to fully understand the old man's words, but knowing that many people are similar to herself, Nozomi no longer felt so inferior and was in a much better mood. The next day, she went to an arcade to play video games, took photos at a self-service photo booth, bought flowers at a flower shop, and even boarded a boat to go see. Passing by a boutique, Nozomi bought a glass ring. Junichi once said, "Some transparent things, like air, although invisible, truly exist." Therefore, when she saw transparent glass, Nozomi immediately thought of Junichi and bought the transparent object she saw. Moreover, Nozomi also began collecting various glass bottles, as if possessing these could give her the love she desired. However, nothing escapes the principle of extremes leading to reversal. That day, Nozomi came to work excitedly, but accidentally slipped off her stool while organizing shelves and discs. Her wrist was cut by a nail, and her true identity, which she tried hard to hide, was exposed in front of Junichi. Nozomi thought her appearance would scare Junichi, but unexpectedly, he softly said, "I am no different from you." Junichi actually wanted to say that he felt empty inside and lived like a walking corpse, but Nozomi misunderstood and thought he was a doll. By a twist of fate, the two no longer hid their feelings and started their first real date. They went to the cinema together to watch a movie, counted stars under the night sky, and rode a motorcycle together, wind rushing through the streets. After tasting the sweetness of love, Nozomi grew increasingly disgusted with her intimacy with Hideo. Every time afterwards, she would wash her body repeatedly, as if trying to wash away that touch that did not belong to her. Love has always been like this. Sweetness and bitterness always coexist. No one can only enjoy the sweetness without tasting the sourness and suffering. At Junichi's house, Nozomi glimpsed a photo of his ex-girlfriend, and her heart suddenly ached. What hurt her even more was that on Junichi's day off, she had to temporarily replace him at the cash register. At this moment, Hideo walked into the shop. During checkout, Nozomi felt guilty and never looked up at him. However, Nozomi, who narrowly escaped trouble, was seen through by the shop owner. The shop owner guessed the truth from her panicked expression and, knowing she had feelings for Junichi, used this as leverage to force Nozomi to have sex with him. The funny thing was, the shop owner had always thought Nozomi was cheating with 2 men, but he didn't realize she was just a doll. Once again used as a tool, Nozomi's newly rebuilt confidence was completely shattered. Nozomi felt that no one truly loved her. They only saw her as a substitute. Her thoughts were quickly confirmed. Previously, Hideo had kept her locked in a dark cabinet, which she never understood. Until that day, Nozomi saw a new doll lying on the bed, and Hideo had bought a cake for it to celebrate its first arrival. Seeing everything clearly, Nozomi couldn't help but ask Hideo if he didn't like her, saying that any doll would do as long as it satisfied his desires. But now that Nozomi had consciousness, she no longer wanted to be controlled by Hideo. Hideo was stunned for a long time after hearing this. He had never thought that an object could have a life. After the surprise, Hideo pleaded, "Can Nozomi return to her original form? Humans with souls are too troublesome." He didn't want to deal with romantic relationships, so he bought Nozomi as a substitute for emotion and flesh. It turned out that Hideo had once experienced a profound love. However, the dual pressures of work and life gradually distanced him from his girlfriend, and they eventually parted ways. Since then, Hideo focused solely on his work. As he grew older, Hideo was fired from his company and, helpless, became a waiter at a restaurant. No matter how hard Hideo tried, he was often scolded by customers and the manager. He could only smile and not dare to argue. Because of this, Hideo completely shut himself off, no longer communicating with others, and was unwilling to pursue any feelings. But Nozomi only thought Hideo despised her, and in her grief, she turned and left. She spent a night on a park bench, then went to the elderly person's home. The elderly man was old and ill, only able to rest in bed. After a conversation, she learned that in his youth, the elderly man was a substitute teacher. With no fixed job, he would go wherever needed to fill in temporarily. He never married in his life, had no children, only a dog that kept him company for over 10 years. But not long ago, the dog also left him. The elderly person requested Nozomi to touch his forehead. For the patient, this was the best and most effective comfort. Nozomi immediately reached out her hand, and when her fingertips touched the elderly person's forehead, he couldn't help but sigh. People always say that those with cold hands have warm hearts. I used to think it was just superstition, but now it seems to be true. This was the first time since gaining consciousness that Nozomi was praised, and also the first time she felt familial love, so she was moved to tears. After comforting the elderly person to sleep, Nozomi sought to understand the reason for her emerging consciousness by following the address on the packaging box, and finally met her creator. However, the creator also couldn't explain why she developed consciousness, just as God created humans, but couldn't explain why the human heart exists. But this journey was not entirely fruitless for Nozomi. The creator told Nozomi, "She differs from humans in composition. One is non-flammable after death, the other flammable, yet ultimately both turn to dust. No one is nobler than the other, and Nozomi has no reason to feel inferior." Thus, Nozomi truly accepted herself. After saying goodbye to the creator, Nozomi proactively approached Junichi and said she no longer minded being a substitute. After all, her existence was to serve others. If Junichi had any needs, whatever they were, Nozomi would do her best to fulfill them. Unexpectedly, after hearing this, Junichi believed that Nozomi was never a substitute in his heart, but there was one thing only Nozomi could satisfy. Junichi imagined releasing all the gas inside Nozomi's body like last time, then blowing her up again. Nozomi thought this was an expression of love, so she agreed without hesitation. Thus, Junichi repeatedly emptied Nozomi's body on the bed and used his mouth to blow her up until he was exhausted and fell asleep. Nozomi looked at Junichi's sleeping face and expressed her affection in the same way. She cut open Junichi's abdomen with a knife, sealed his mouth with tape, and blew air into him mouth-to-mouth. But Junichi not only failed to revive, but also suffered increased pain, with the cut bleeding profusely. Nozomi was panic-stricken, unable to understand why her gas could not enter Junichi's body. Just as she was puzzled, Junichi stopped breathing due to excessive blood loss. The next morning, Nozomi put Junichi into a plastic bag and discarded him at a nearby garbage collection site, then wandered aimlessly alone on the street. Suddenly, Nozomi saw that boutique again, so she bought a bunch of transparent glass jars. However, while admiring her spoils alone, a man mistakenly thought she was a street prostitute. If it had been before, Nozomi might have fulfilled her duty, but now she had learned to refuse. However, it was this small matter that suddenly made Nozomi realize that she was not trying to be anyone's substitute, but only wanted to serve Junichi. Now, Junichi has become a pile of trash, and Nozomi no longer wishes to continue being a container for others' desires. Thus, Nozomi tore off the tape on her wrist and then laid down in the trash heap, waiting for her body to be emptied little by little. At this moment, a passing little girl glimpsed the broken glass ring on Nozomi's hand, and out of liking, she exchanged it with her own doll. After the girl left, Nozomi, on the brink of death, thought back to the time she had dinner with Junichi. At that time, a little girl in the store was celebrating her birthday. Nozomi watched with envy because no one had ever come into this world to be happy and celebrate for her. Perhaps to make up for this regret, Nozomi built a scene in her mind. Hideo bringing her a birthday cake, Junichi and the surrounding customers gathered around her, singing the birthday song, and Nozomi blowing out the birthday candles for the first time in her life. The setting sun, blood red, spilled diagonally over the landfill filled with glass bottles and faded plastic. Nozomi curled up in the desolation, exhaling her last breath gently. A dandelion in front of her bloomed in response, carrying her transparent soul, stretching into countless silver threads in the dusk, rising with the wind. The white fairy swept across city wrinkles, girls flying skirts, courtyard green potted plants, lonely old men on street corners, women showing tears of hope, girls longing faces, busy shopkeepers at the photo shop, the once entwined Hideo, the dream weaver, the lonely girl curled up, finally rising and falling, returning to her delicate body. The city's hustle and bustle continued as usual. The tram roared over the tracks, and the fluorescent lights of convenience stores illuminated countless numb faces. In the gaps between these mechanical gears, there was once a transparent soul persistently collecting every fleeting glimmer, transforming into a silent farewell.